Hello. You are listening to the Carroll Connection with your host, Jared Carroll.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Carroll Connection. I'm your host, Jared Carroll, here to bring you guys another great episode. I did want to take a chance to shout out last week's episode 163 with Andrew Barter-Will. It was his first appearance since episode 11, so a lot has happened since that episode. We talked about pretty much the growth of his company, talked about his growth in the solar industry, and talked about the rise of the quote-unquote solar bros and how that's been like an interesting introduction to his industry and how that's influenced things in terms of business. We talked a lot about his leadership skills and how that's grown over the years. It was a really great conversation. You can check that out, thecarrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. If you'd like to watch your podcast, go on YouTube, search The Carroll Connection or at Jared M. Carroll, and it should come up right for you. And if you want to be a guest or return as a guest, we're looking towards 2024 at this point. So booked out for the rest of the year. So start thinking January, February, March. If you want to plan stuff out with me, it's always greatly appreciated. Hit me up on Instagram at Jared M. Carroll or at The Carroll Connection, and we'll set that up. So that brings me to today's episode 164 with Troy Travassos.
Hello.
How are you, my man?
I'm great, man. Great to be here finally.
I know. I'm glad that you were able to work with me and we were able to move this out to today so we could schedule that, and it worked better for my schedule, and I'm glad that it worked for your schedules as well. We've been talking about this for a while, so it was kind of just getting ready for you to kind of come on here and talk about your stuff. And I've given you a lot of time, and you've gone through a lot of different things in the last several years too, which we'll talk about later in the podcast. And I think it's gonna be a really great conversation for you, for me, for the audience. I think it's gonna be really great. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm glad that we push it to now, and we didn't do it 2 years ago, because I've had so much more experiences and I have a lot more to talk about today, so it's perfect.
Yeah, I remember we were talking about podcasting and you're peeking into that realm and stuff like that, and
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I remember that, and I was like, as long as if you really want to do it, make sure you do it, and it's we were talking about that and stuff like that. So I'm also glad that it sounds like a lot of things have happened in your life that are positive and really have moving you forward towards being who you want to be. So we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But how I like to start the podcast is just who you are and what you're doing currently, just something short and sweet.
Yeah. So I'm Troy Travassos, as you mentioned before, 20 years old. Grew up in Fall River, Massachusetts. Currently reside in Boston now. I'm a senior. How do you say it? So it's understandable for everybody. I'm a senior auditor at a Big Four firm up in Boston. I've been living there for the past 3 years. And yeah, life's really picked up since then, obviously. But obviously, you can't shy away from everything that I've learned and everything I experienced growing up around, Seekonk area, Fall River area, Bristol County. But yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's perfect. And we'll dive into some of that. Obviously, we're going to be smart with how we talk about things. I always mention to guests whatever you're comfortable with sharing in terms of your profession and your career and stuff like that. But that's not really the focus here either. The focus is a lot about you and what you've been going through and your personal growth and stuff like that. But what I like to start with is the family dynamic. And I always give the audience my typical corny little cliche thing, and it's always of the metaphor of when you're building a house, the foundation is the most important piece.
Absolutely.
And I always refer back to the family unit, and every family unit is different. That's why I think it's important to ask this to get a little bit of a view into how each guest grew up, to better ask them questions that they'll understand and appreciate, and also for myself to better understand where you grew up, because most of the time during day-to-day life, we're not asking, what's your family life? It's just not typically a conversation that we have. So I think it's important to ask these things. So I'll let you take the floor with this. And like I said, whatever you're comfortable with sharing,
sure,
I'll let you dive in.
Yeah. As I mentioned before, grew up in Fall River. I lived there basically my whole life until recently. Family of 4 growing up, my mom, dad, my sister, me being the youngest sibling. Portuguese family. So if you know anything about Portuguese family, which I'm sure a lot of people that watch this podcast know what that's like, but if you're not, it's just a very tight-knit, loving, European family. I think definitely from my parents, like what I grabbed from one versus the other. I think my mom, I think I get my sensitivity from her. My dad, kind of like in a comedic way, like his like brute like masculinity in a way, like his forwardness. But thankfully, with my mom and my dad's genes, it's balanced. So I'm just not like too much on either side of the scale. So I have this person that is presented in front of you today. Um, I'm fortunate I got to obviously grow up with an older sibling too, and basically kind of learn from them, but then their experiences too, and going about things, my own way. Obviously, me and my sister are definitely different people, but we get along, and we always are there for each other. From a wider aspect, like obviously, it's like my dad's like one of seven siblings, so I have a ton of cousins, like ton of aunts and uncles. So growing up, Christmas and holidays and all that stuff was always huge family, like lots of presents. Thankfully, good for me. But I noticed as I got older, like I don't know if it's just like my family or just like this everybody is. I noticed like everybody's kind of like separate now. It is what it is. But hopefully, as I'm getting older and I'm becoming a man and I'm find my way out into this world, maybe I can create my own family and then just build upon that, and then whatever I thought was missing from when I was a child, I can hopefully going forward kind of create that and forge that my own.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like we had a pretty similar upbringing in the sense I'm Portuguese as well, so I understand what you mean by that. And also just the way that my mother was and the way that my father was. Similar to you, my
Yeah,
mom's more sensitive, my dad was more traditional father figure role. And
yeah,
I think I'm the embodiment of both. And like
yeah,
I think I do a good job of mixing and
yeah,
meshing that personality, and I
yeah.
think that's like part of the reason too that we've been able to connect so well
I
too
think
is the
so.
fact that we share that similar personality trait where we, especially when we're playing football, we're competitive, but we also can have these deeper level
Talk
conversations
about
and
our
be
feelings.
we really get into it. And then like even the comedic sense of stuff too, even when
Yeah,
we joke around, is it's a sense of humor that we both can like get behind and joke with and stuff like that. And I think it's able to create a good relationship, but it also stems from like having solid like family. And I think
yeah,
that's really important for a lot of people to, if you're privileged enough to experience that, because I've had a lot of guests who come from different family units, and that's why, like I
yeah,
mentioned, it's cool to hear these things because like I wouldn't have known like that your parents were like that, or having like an older sister, what that relationship was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
if I just didn't ask. And
Right.
it's a lot of just asking and getting back to that conversational skill that we don't necessarily have in, whether it's school or outside of school on the sport field or whatever it is. We don't really like ask these questions, and I think they're important questions to ask
Yeah,
people.
definitely. Yeah.
And like, how was it for you being able to kind of, like you mentioned a little bit, but like looking up to like your older sister and like having that relationship and having someone to kind of like lean on as you're growing up was probably a good thing. So I think having siblings, they're like our first friend
Yeah.
initially, so it's always
Yeah.
cool to have that.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I'm gonna do my best to kind of describe it. I think growing up we would have a lot of quarrels, and then they became like serious quarrels, and it kind of like um, kind of made things challenging, on a relationship basis. But I think as we got older, like we definitely prioritize spending time with each other. At least like I won't just like go out of my way to spend time with her. Like it'll be with her, my mom and my dad and her children. I think that's been a big part of it too.
So you're an uncle now, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've been an uncle for a while
Oh, really?
actually.
How is that? I mentioned, talk about that because I'm
Oh yeah,
recently an uncle of almost, it's a little over 2 years at this point, but like it's definitely, it's one of those things where it's like it's a new experience and new emotion. So like, how has it been for you, kind of being in that kind of role?
oh, I love it. Yeah. So her oldest is 9, her 9-year-old daughter, and then she has a I want to say 6 or 7-year-old son, and then her youngest is the baby. It's Selena, Cole, and Amari. That's their names. Yeah, I love them. Like I like Selena. Like I treat her like if she was my own. You know what I mean? So it's nice too because like it's very easy for her and I to kind of relate on the same things. Um, she plays basketball because she is tall. I just want to say that she's 9 years old and she's already 5'1", which is absurd. I think that's actually my sister's height. So yeah, I get to teach her like how to play basketball. I really hope that she just stays passionate and sticks with it. Um, I could tell you a quick story actually. So when I was 9 growing up, like I got into WWE, like pro wrestling. So when I would come over, because they always want to play with me, because I'm the cool uncle. I always bring the video games, and they always want to spend time with me. So I'm like, what am I gonna do to relate to my 8-year-old niece? I'm just like, let me show her some wrestling, see how she likes it. Luckily now the product's different today, where you can show kids that.
True, true.
Yeah, like it's not like when we were kids watching it. Um, there's definitely an emphasis on the women wrestling. I think that's so important because you know it's just positive role models for her to look at. Like, why wouldn't I want her to just like look at like a strong, beautiful, athletic, but like charismatic woman as a role model, right? And she's also like um, a person of color too. Her favorite is Bianca Belair, who's African American, and her thing is like she like has this excruciatingly long braid that she like twirls around, and then the girls will pull on it, and then if they pull on it, she'll like whip them back. But anyway, she looks up to this woman's like incredibly like stronger than me, definitely benches more than me, but is unmistakably beautiful, unmistakably charismatic, and that's a hero for her, and that's amazing. One day I surprised her and I got her tickets to see the show in Providence. I didn't expect her to cry. She cried when I got her the tickets. And then I brought her to the show. It was probably like, I hope it wasn't like the best day of her life, but it could have been easily. And she was so happy, and I was like holding her hand. She's like skip into the arena. And then she's just like, it's all guys matches. She's like, when's my favorite coming out? Her favorite comes out. She shrieks of excitement, and then starts crying again. I'm like, Selena, come on. And then everybody's looking at me like, it's okay. It's her favorite. Um, but yeah, just having moments like that, um, it's wonderful. And, you know, she'll always be a part of my life. And obviously, I know I'm just talking about one of my sister's children, but obviously, like Cole and Amari, like, I love spending time with them too. Cole's a sweetheart. He reminds me of me actually, going up to like always like lovey dovey, like I love you, mommy, like kind of like that type of thing. That's how I was as a kid. So yeah, it's wonderful.
It's cool to have that relationship, especially obviously you're mentioning her because she's older and like
Yeah,
you've been with her longer, obviously because she's
yeah,
older, and having those similar interests and like being able to just share that experience and like to see that joy that you had
yeah,
watching it when you were younger. Obviously, the experience is different, and I
yeah,
like the fact that they've toned it down and increased the the inclusiveness to
yeah.
range so they get a wider audience of people to
Exactly. Yeah.
support the sport because
Right.
like
Right.
that's longevity
Right.
and it creates great role models. I mean, the
Yeah.
whole sport has been doing a fantastic job with doing that and trying to like make the sport go further and further with
Yeah.
that. So I think that's really great,
Yeah.
and to share that experience with her, it's something that you'll never forget,
Exactly.
and it just like reconnects you with that inner child too that we were talking about
Oh
off
yeah.
podcast, and like to see that joy, it was probably like so rewarding because it's like damn, like you got to be a kid again for like
Yeah.
a
I
little
did.
bit,
Yeah.
and like that's like the coolest thing, and that's the greatest gift that like whether it's your own children or like nieces and nephews that they give us or grandchildren, whatever, like they reconnect us with that inner child that we have because throughout life it gets dulled through just like adult things, and to reconnect with that when you can is so beautiful, and I'm glad that you were able to share that story with us because I know it's a little personal, but I always appreciate when people share personal stories on the podcast.
Of course. Of course.
I want to start turning us towards, I know that you mentioned sports. Talk about some of the sports that you played and maybe some of the lessons that you gathered by playing some of these sports.
Sure. Yeah. So played a ton of sports. When I grew up, so I just want to preface. My dad's a Cowboys and Yankees fan, so I apologize in advance.
Oh, bandwagon. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
well,
kidding, I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
however you want to spin it, whatever. So obviously, I became a Cowboys and Yankees fan. So when I was a kid, obviously the Yankees won the World Series, so I was in love with baseball, and that's what I wanted to do. What I appreciate about my dad is that my dad was an amazing soccer player. And I can get into like stories about like how he could have like gone to a professional level in some capacity, but he was, just take my word for it, this guy was unbelievable. Like, if the proof is actually, if you come over to my house and go to the bar, it's just like a shelf lined up of just like all these championship trophies he's got playing soccer around here. But he never pushed me to play soccer, and I appreciate that. He just kind of let me do my own thing. It also helps, obviously, that he does love American sports, obviously, but he never like he gave me a soccer ball. Obviously, like I was like probably kicked it like meh, like wasn't interested, but I wanted to play baseball, so he was like all in, and he would play catch with me. He would get me a bat, glove. He got me this mechanism that I don't know if you played baseball growing up, but like you wrap around the pole, and when you hit it, yeah, like to learn how to hit. And it's funny because like I was such a bad baseball player growing up. Like my athletic career did not start great. I was terrible. I was such a soft, like unconfident child playing sports, and it's hilarious how awful I was. But very quickly I learned like how to step into my own confidence. It's definitely great as a kid too, because like I think kids should learn how to lose. I think definitely I don't want to act like, oh, nowadays everything's like different, but I think it's not ever productive to coddle your children. It's always good to have them lose. They should cry. They should experience defeat. They should experience, struggling with something. That's definitely something I did with baseball. But then eventually I figured it out. And geez, isn't that a metaphor in life in itself, right? Um, I ended up growing up. I ended up growing out of baseball when I got to 13. I really enjoyed it, obviously. Um, I I think I won a championship at some point, and I had some plays. My specialty was definitely like catching and fielding, not so much hitting. That's when I figure out maybe I'm probably better at another sport. But I don't know. Like I think I really just got into basketball around when I was 13 years old. I was always interested in it. I loved playing video games as a kid, so I got all the sports games, and I like playing the basketball games. Um, so that's the sport that really took me, but that's not the sport that I excelled in, which is interesting because, as you know, I played football in high school, and that's basically what most people know me for. Is if you knew me growing up as a football player. Um, Football was similar to baseball; it was not good by any means. And it's funny because the only reason why I joined the football team is because all the kids I was like friends with or like trying to be friends with from my middle school when we went by the way, I went to Durfee High School. When we went to Durfee, we all signed up for the football team and I wanted to fit in. That's why I joined the football team. And also was like, oh, well, this will make me like tough or whatever. Sure, yeah, it does that, but it does a lot more, obviously. Jesus Christ. Sorry, I mean I curse on this.
No, you can curse it. It's explicit for a reason.
All right.
Fuck.
Fucking right. But
Yeah, football kicks your ass for sure.
yeah, no. I was horrible. I was goddamn skinny as hell. Like, no. I think they put me at like defensive line and stuff like that. I was like, I'm gonna be a quarterback or a wide receiver. That didn't pan out. It was only until like my junior year of high school is when I really got an opportunity to play corner. They're like, you can't catch, so we'll put you at corner. And then I was like, oh, that's when I really started hitting the weight room and stuff like that. The first game I played was in JV. Like I got an interception, and it was like, oh, holy crap! And then my coach like joked me. He was like, I bet that interception changed your life. Thanks, but yeah, it kind of did. Um, yeah, and then my confidence grew immensely. Like obviously, once I figured out, wow, I'm actually good at something. Um, but to really summarize it, like just playing football, because I know you played football growing up. Um, it's a football game in itself. It's such a roller coaster of emotions, which is how life is. Like you're up and then you're down, and then it's close, and then you don't know if you're gonna make it, and you have to corral everybody together and really become a unit and power through. And it's emotional when you lose, and it's emotional when you win, and it's like that every week. And then you go back to practice and you try try to have a favorable result again. Unfortunately, I didn't have many favorable results, Durfee, but we don't have to get too much into that. I know I mentioned basketball and kind of strayed away from it. I was not every sport I had tried, I was horrible. But I think once I got older, I realized that like this is how it is. If you want to try a new skill or something, you're gonna suck probably at first, and then eventually you're gonna figure it out. You might figure out it quicker than other things, but you know, obviously the football chapter in my life is probably closed, and I'm very comfortable saying that. Um, maybe my high school career could have gone a different way than I would have wanted it to. Um, and I stepped away from football for a little bit. Obviously, we can get into my college years, but I went to community college, and then I went to UMass Dartmouth. And then I don't know what happened to UMass Dartmouth. I was like, we can get into college and why I wanted to do it, but I wanted to walk on to the UMass Dartmouth football team just because like I knew I could do it, and I knew I definitely deserved and I was talented enough to be in that team. And I did it, and holy crap, it was tough. But man, did I it really was great for me to go through that and experience that, because it just showed me that like, wow, I really can do anything I put my mind to. And it's crazy because like I don't know how many people hit that realization in their life. That you like, wow, if I can set a goal and I put in the work and I know it's attainable and I just don't accept any failure, I can achieve that, you know? So that was a big part of me. So just even I can say for the rest of my life I'm a college football player, and that's good enough for me. But what's even greater is that obviously I didn't get any playing time, but I was fortunate enough to gain the respect of the players on the team, but first and foremost the head coach. Um, Coach Robichaud, I definitely appreciate him giving the opportunity and his opinions of me as a stand-up individual. That kind of set the precedent for like the rest of my life. Like doing that, honestly, like I like looking back, it was a crazy decision to make, but it really set me up because I'm taking classes. I'm skipping the tax accountant class that we were in. Hey, Jared.
We always skip that class.
Well, I think you would attend it, and then
Barely.
well, and then I'd be like, "Hey, Jared, do you know what's happening?" No, man, not a. Thanks, man.
That was the worst class ever, because like I remember one of the first things they said in that class was like, "Oh, well, tax always changes every year, so like you buy this book and it's gonna be useless."
Right.
And it's like,
what's the point?
well, what's the point of taking this class if it's just gonna constantly keep changing? Like, if you're teaching the skill, I guess, but like I'm like, damn, this class sucked. And like,
Yeah.
I remember, I don't even think attendance was required in that class. I think,
No.
yeah, I don't think it was.
Yeah.
And then like you just show up and
It
you
was
get
like
the
an
cheat
open book
sheet.
test.
Yeah, every time.
Yeah.
That's the whole entire college experience.
Yeah.
It's like they gave up because everyone was using Chegg
Yeah.
and Quizlet. They're like,
Yeah.
all right, just open book everything.
Yeah.
But in reality, if we're in the workforce, you can just Google any question you want.
Exactly.
Like it was always.
Real quick to wrap up the
Yeah.
sports topic. So yeah, great rah-rah speech I gave about the football thing. What the sports I play today, I play basketball. I'm happy to say I'm much better than I was when I started at 14. Obviously I never got to play for high school, but it's something I do, and now I get to teach my niece how to play. And that's rewarding for me because when I was 14 in high school, someone was like, "You're the worst basketball player I've seen in my life." And then I taught my niece how to shoot, and then she told me, "Hey, my coach said I had nice form." That's everything I've done the last 14 years playing basketball. Just hearing that's enough. That's awesome.
It's cool to hear that you've tried a bunch of different sports and had to go through growing pains in each of them in different ways. And I think that's important for especially young kids to go through, to play different sports, to try different things, because like you mentioned, like your dad was good at soccer, but to be lucky enough for him not to force it on you, because a lot of parents will vicariously live through their children through that aspect. For him to allow you to do whatever you wanted to sport wise was the greatest blessing, because you were able to figure out what you were good at and what you liked and what you weren't good at, what you didn't like.
Right.
And that's an important thing for a kid to figure that out independently, is to be like, all right, well, this is tough. And then to go through it, try to manage your emotions and figure out, damn, like if I'm striking out or I'm not, or I make an error in baseball, or whatever it is, and be like, man, maybe I just don't like the sport. Maybe this sport isn't for me. To pivot and to play football, where football is one of those different games where it's a lot more physical. It's in your face. It's like you're going to get hit, you're going to
Yeah.
get bruised, you're going to get banged up. Where baseball is very patient. You got to be very calm. You got to be very mentally
Yeah.
focused with baseball to play the
And
different
then
sports.
basketball is a blend of both.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
very mental game, but it's also a very physical game at the same time. And
Yeah.
you could get in your head with your shot if you don't see it go in the net all the
Yeah.
time. Like it gets to that
Yeah.
space to play those different sports, to experience those different lessons, really help progress us to be better adults in the future. And like you mentioned, through the college experience too.
Yeah.
And that's where I want to take this conversation next, is kind of your reasons for going to college, and then you can mention a little bit more about the sport aspect if you want to.
Yeah, yeah. I guess before even starting college, that everything you mentioned like is basically like what I was trying to get at. It doesn't even have to go with sports too. Like even if you know, as a parent, like again, like my dad was a soccer player, I played baseball, but like, what if I wanted to play the flute? You know what I mean? Or what if I wanted to get into theater or something like that? It's just you find your own way, you try different things, and then you know you'll find your path eventually. But yeah. Why do I want to go to college? Because when I was in high school, they told me I had to. It's funny because you probably remember that when you're in high school and they round you up in a room and they're like, "Hey," especially it was like what 2010. They're like, "There's a recession right now, so if you don't go to college, you're fucked." We're like, "Okay," so they like forced us all to like fill out college applications, and I looked up all this stuff. I already knew like I wasn't gonna be able to get into like whatever college I want to go to, just because like unfortunately in high school I didn't apply myself like I should have. Um, but that would start to pick up eventually. I think a lot of that, especially in high school, was like me trying to fit in, right? And I think it's like a common theme of like my younger years is like trying to fit in, trying to find my way. Was something I struggled with. I think younger, growing up. Um, Obviously, not that when you get older everything's better, but I was able to learn for that. I had many epiphanies, which I'll get into as I went to college. But I went to BCC. Um, I originally wanted to be a journalist, and my grades were a little better than high school, but still wasn't exactly like all the way applying myself. Like I know I could. Like I was a smart kid growing up. I knew like kind of like how I mentioned before. Like I knew if I put my mind to something, I can accomplish it well. I'm gonna try to run through this as efficiently as I can, but it's long story short, I want to be a journalist, and then I changed my mind. And then I took a test, and it was like, oh, accounting is number one. Sure, I'll do that. I'll circle back on why I don't really uh, appreciate that approach, but I'm also grateful that it got me to where I am today. But so I was like, okay, accounting, sure. I'm thinking, it's a career I can do. I get 9 to 5, and I can just like go about my usual day. Well, we'll get into that. It's funny because I wanted to go to UMass Amherst initially. ECC had a program where if you had a 3.0 GPA, you get a discount on your tuition to go to UMass Amherst. If you got 2.5, you got a discount to go to UMass Dartmouth. So I had like a 2 point what, like I don't know, 4 or something. I told the counselor, I was like, hey, I want to go to UMass Dartmouth. Sorry, UMass Amherst. She's like, yeah, it's impossible. I was like, oh, okay. And then the moment she said that, I was like, okay, challenge accepted. But thank God she said that. Thank God she had that doubt in me, because I was like, okay, well, now it's game on. Now it's serious, and it really forced me to like take life seriously. Thank God. Made a lot of personal adjustments. Unfortunately, she was right. Yeah, I got a 2.9 GPA. Whatever. But geez, I mean, I really turned a corner, and it really set me up going into UMass Dartmouth. And then when I got to UMass Dartmouth, I think I was like, I should have been a junior, but I was technically a sophomore because when I transferred, one credit didn't carry over, which is dumb, but whatever. I had the fortune of me and your cousin Jake, which led me to meet you, which brings me to us today. So very grateful for everybody I met in college. I had the opportunity of being a part of the Asian Student Association. Our friend Anthony introduced me and Jake to that. Shout out to Anthony. Shout out to Jake. I love you guys. I'll see you later tonight. Um, yeah, I knew that in order for me to get where I want to be, I had to surround myself with not only like positive people, but like people that were like also like driven people, kind of like the opposite of the people I surround myself in my younger years growing up. And that's not like a stab at anybody. That's just like the reality of what it was. I just didn't choose the right crowds growing up always to fit in with the places I wanted to go. Um, but I'm always grateful for everybody I had the pleasure of spending time with, because that just helped me become a better person, because I just gained so many perspectives along the way. And I think it helps me become a more genuine person in that aspect, because growing up, I had friends from different social classes, upbringings, cultural, everything, you name it. And that's why I liked UMass Dartmouth too, because it was a very diverse school. That's why I liked the Asian Student Association, because I just always found myself thriving in diverse environments, and I just always thinks it made me, always gain more perspectives, and I never thought to not thinking too highly of myself, but always kept me humble and always kept me appreciated of how everybody else grows up. And I think that's really important. I think more people. I think if you have an opportunity to seek those opportunities, you should, whether that's going abroad or being in social clubs or anything like that. I think that's super helpful and just helps you grow immensely as a person. You have no idea. Um, yeah, and then fortunately with those upbringings, fortunately with the people that I was able to spend time with in college, it got me to a nice place. Um, I think when I graduated in 2018 with a bachelor's. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened, but like my confidence was not where it needed to be when I graduated. I don't, and you're probably hearing about this for the first time. It's not something I really open up about a lot, but don't know. I just felt like I didn't deserve like the jobs everybody else was landing. I found myself in like a lower level accounting job that I knew that like, or maybe at the time, like I didn't think I deserved more. Um, and eventually I landed at an employer. I was working in Brockton. Um, I knew that my saving grace was going to be my master's degree. If I knew it was going to end up in public accounting, I would have just like not worked full time, gone for my CPA, done my master's all in one go. Like, unfortunately, I don't have my CPA, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I really did. I didn't even know if like accounting was for me. I was just like going through it. I was in low level accounting, and that's why I did MBA versus MSA. Because I'm like, oh well, at least have a business degree. I can branch off to whatever. Um, when I worked at my previous employer, um, I was going towards like the end of my master's program. The assistant controller went up to me one day, and I don't know why he just decided to talk to me. Maybe it was just like an energy thing or a fate thing. I don't know why, but he just took a liking to me. And he was like, "Hey, like I heard that, you're going to school and you're working full time. Like that's great. Not a lot of people do that. What do you plan on doing with your master's degree?" I'm like, "I don't know, like maybe I'll just work under you. Like be a staff accountant." He's like, "Yeah, you could do that. Or you could go to big four CPA firm." And like I didn't even know the name of the firm he said. That's not like, unfortunately I didn't have like, parents that or like, I didn't have an upbringing that like had like a certain past. Everything had to do it to figure out my own. So like I didn't even know what that was. And he's like, "It's a big four firm." I'm like, "Oh, I know a big four firm is." So he was like, "Yeah, are your grades good?" My grades were okay. They weren't terrible. I think it was like a 3.1 GPA, which is a lot better than what I was doing in the past. But I think this firm required like a 3.4 GPA. And he was like, "Hey, this is like 2019. This is like the beginning of 2020. So like we're approaching the pandemic." He's like, "Hey, I can give you a contact. You send your resume. You take care of the rest." So that's what happens. I get an interview. Usually, how does an interview process go? You have like multiple rounds, and like you kind of wait. You send thank you emails. So I had my interview, and I spoke to two people. One of the things I mentioned in my interview was how when I was an intern, um, the place that hired me at this internship, I was the only one from UMass Dartmouth. Everybody else was like from Bryant, Syracuse, like all these like big like D1 schools, Penn State, you name it. Um, and then he's like, "Hey, like I know you mentioned that like you're from UMass Dartmouth. I was just wondering why you highlighted that." And when I was explaining it, I almost got like emotional. I don't want. Sorry, I didn't almost get emotional. I did get emotional. I almost cried. I didn't cry. I held it back. I was getting emotional. I was like, "Hey, like I'm from Fall River. I'm from, you know, I know a lot. I grew up with a lot of people that would never be able to have these opportunities, and I have a lot of pride in that. I take a lot of pride in who I surround myself with, how driven I am, the places I know I deserve to be. You get it, right? um, so he was like, okay. And then I spoke to the lady and then I hung up. And like I prepared for this interview like all fucking hell. Like I couldn't sleep the night before. Like I did the interview and I just dropped and I took a nap. Like I was gonna send a thank you email like at some point. Because I knew this job was gonna change my life. Because it was gonna finally get me to a spot where I knew I deserved to be in. Was it 2 years too late? Maybe, but really wasn't because I was ready for it at that point then. So going back, I was ready for it now, like going back to 2020. He gave me a phone call and he's like, "Hey, Troy, how's it going? I have my son in the car. I'm just picking him up. I just want to give you a call and just like give you some feedback in the interview." I was like, "Okay," I didn't expect that. He's like, "Hey, are you gonna work your ass off?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." He's like, "Okay, great, because I want to give you an offer right now, and I wanted to call you my son in the car so he can hear how excited you are." And I was like, "Okay," and yeah, and that's what happened. And fast forward to today, um, I've been working at this place for. I'm in my fourth year now. That's what it's like a school thing, so I'm like a fourth year. I've been there for 3 years. Um, yeah, I'll get into all the challenges and all the experiences of the game from that, but yeah, so I'm not regretful of the paths I took. Obviously, like I know I mentioned before that maybe I could have picked a different career I was more passionate about and all that stuff, and I can get into all that and I can wrap around, but I don't regret like being here, being able to talk to you about this today because I think it's a really important story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you allowed yourself to get a little bit emotional with it. And I appreciate that because a lot of people have come on this podcast, and I've had plenty of guests that have got emotional, and I've had plenty shed tears about stuff because these conversations don't normally get had, and you kind of sit with a lot of this stuff. I always like someone I forget came on the podcast and coined it kind of therapeutic in the sense of
Yeah,
just to be able to talk about your stuff. When you get to talk about your stuff, you get to be reflective and you get to think about those times of your life where a lot of those emotions were heavily charged, and to feel that again brings up emotions again.
yeah,
And I think it's beautiful, and I always appreciate people like yourself that are willing to tap into that and express that in a podcast because it's authentic, it's real. And I think what you're hitting on is a really great point is that you might not have been ready for it right out of college, but it wasn't meant for you then. It was meant for you that like in 2020 when you got it.
exactly. Yeah,
And you got to accept that there's going to be different seasons to your life and to go through those different seasons where you're confused and you don't know where to go. But those seasons inspire you to change and inspire you
yeah,
to chase the things that you actually want because life's about up and down. It's always going to be up and down. Like you're never always going to be happy. And I always like struggled with that concept of chasing happiness. Like, what is happiness? Is it good to
yeah,
be happy all the time? And I remember with my therapist that we talked about is it's you should never chase the happiness because it's always going to be fleeting. It's always going to go. It's always going to come and go. Being happy all the time doesn't like mean a good life because you need the good with the bad. If you don't know what the bad is, then you'll never appreciate the good. And like
Yeah.
you need that experience to really help you get to where you want to go in life. And it really does sound like that path that you took really helped you propel you and go into that interview and demanded it almost. Like you were like, I want this because of this.
Yeah.
I deserve this. And obviously the interviewer felt that and offered you the job because they could tell that you were passionate about what you wanted to do. And it's not so much passionate about maybe the work itself, because I work in a similar field, and to say that I'm passionate about it is crazy, but like you're passionate about your work. You're passionate about your work ethic. Like you know you're a good worker and you know you deserve opportunities to prove yourself. And I think that stood out in the interview, and I think that's really great. And I know this is where we're gonna pivot towards that last like kind of 3 years where a lot of these changes have happened. So
Yeah.
allow you to kind of dive into whatever spot you want to dive in, whether it's building off of this career that you've had the last several years, or if it's another turning point. But I'll allow you to kind of dive into this last 3 years.
Yeah. I honestly don't even know where to begin. It's been unbelievable. Um, in a way, like it feels like. Well, before I even get into it, just to piggyback on the points that you're making. Yeah. Everything. If you want something in life, like it requires a new version of you, and personal adjustments have to be made. I'm going through that right now, where there's things that I want and I need to make personal adjustments. But it sucks because, like, damn, like you really just want. Sometimes you just want to like sit back, relax, and you know, like I ask myself sometimes, like, why do I keep feeling like I have to level up? I can't just like sit back and just smell the roses. But I don't know. Maybe I'll get to that point where I take a chill pill. But I'm still young, so why not just grow as much as I can? But yeah. So I'll tell a funny story how or maybe I won't. I don't know how much time we have left, but basically when I lived in Cambridge, and before I even moved into Cambridge, I went on a hike with Jake, and I never hiked before.
I feel like I remember this too.
Yeah, so Jake's kind of an asshole. You're an asshole, Jake, and he didn't just take me on a hike. He took me on like a hike that was like 2, 3 hikes in one hike, and I did not pack for this goddamn hike.
This is how you learn how to be a hiker, though. Like this is like a rite of passage.
Apparently, yeah.
Same thing. I've had the same experience. Just like when me and
Yeah,
my buddy went.
I wanted to kill his ass. I wanted to strangle him. I was so upset. um, in a way, dude, that helped me like go into like my next chapter of life because obviously, well, it helped with endurance number one. But like my new life was I wasn't trying right now. I'm walking and commuting, and I'm like, it's just like life became very full speed and fast forward. So that was a good way to kind of get introduced into what my new life is going to be. Um, I also was very because I was going to live my own. I was very, and I wish I'm kind of returning into it, but I was very very committed to my fitness and my nutrition. Um, Not that my mom was a terrible cook, and Jesus Christ, I can't wait to have one of her meals tomorrow. But um, yeah, like I think because like I lived at home for so long, like I didn't even get to um like I was a commuter at college. So like when I was finally in that environment where I was like in control of myself, like I wanted to be so on top of everything, and it really just helped me, kind of obviously like and I was never perfect. I'm sure like especially like when you learn how to take care of yourself, you mess up a lot. Um I learned how to do that later, I guess, in my 20s than most people, but all in all, I'm grateful for it and how well I've been able to adjust. Um, but yeah, like lived in Cambridge for like the past like 3 years. I just moved to the Jamaica Plain in September, but it was a phenomenal time. I got to live with someone I worked with at the Big Four firm, if I haven't already mentioned that, and yeah, I got that like kind of like bro experience I missed out on in college. Um, but it was also nice because I got to like talk to a friend after work every night, and I thought that was awesome. Like, I didn't. Why do I need a therapist? I got my bro here. Um, but I think from my job, first and foremost, working in a big four, yeah, it's it's different. And you learn that very quickly. I'm about to enter my fourth busy season now, and it's no joke. But what I'll say about working in a big four firm is that they definitely do get the best people that work there. Um, my he's now my old roommate, my friend Robbie. He That's what he said to me like when he left the firm. He left the firm shortly after I moved into Cambridge. He's like, I'm gonna miss the people, man, because my God, like you really do surround yourself with the best people. Kind of like what I was mentioning before when I was at UMass Darmouth, and I try to surround myself with people that are very driven, motivated. Yeah, it's like that turned up to like 12. It's like because they're only gonna hire the best people, not just the best performances, but like the best people. And when you look at that, you're like, wow, like you really have to like remind yourself like you deserve to be here because imposter syndrome is so real. It really is. And I really struggled with that in the first 2 years. I really did. And I had a lot of challenges working there. Um, Obviously, it just builds character upon character. My time management, obviously, I think it's obvious that you're working more hours than you would be at a big four versus not a big four. I'm going to deal with that, but still trying to do everything I mentioned I want to do before, staying on top of my fitness, my nutrition, all the things I wanted to do. I wanted to find like a relationship in some way, shape, or form, find time for that. How the heck was I going to do that when I was trying? I can't even like find time to play basketball with my friend or find time to make dinner on a Thursday night, all these things. But obviously, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but things get better, and it's just really character building. I think obviously you make sacrifices and adjustments and you focus on different things. Um, I closed a chapter in football many years ago, but I wanted to stay. I still wanted something to have to train for and have, you know, something on the calendar just to prepare yourself for it. The Spartan races was that for me. Um, I'm fortunate I get to do that with my colleague Dan now. He's former military. He's kind of similar story to me, where he joined the Big Four firm later than you normally would, just because he went through the military first. Obviously, I joined 2 years later. So very fortunate I get to do that with him. And it's all well and it's all great, and I really do appreciate where I am now. Obviously, I think there's a lot of times where I had challenges. I think last year for me was the biggest roller coaster year my entire life. I had like some really, really low downs and some really, really high highs. Um, let's focus on the positive.
Well, it's good to talk about both if you feel comfortable, if you want to. It's up to you on
Yeah,
how
yeah,
you want to manage
yeah.
the time
I know,
talking
I
about
know,
stuff.
I know. I'm kind of rambling too, but like, it's really a lot to reflect on the last 3 years. Cause like, it's really like my life started 3 years ago, which is crazy. And it's like, no, it's like, it's not even like that I wasn't like experiencing life before. It's just like, my gosh, like I'm finally like kind of like what I was talking about before, how I was so excited to work at this place. I'm where I wanted to be in the city. Like I never really thought I would live in, but like when I was a teenager, I really wanted to. And almost as I got older, kind of manifested that. And yeah, it's really exciting. It's really enjoyable.
I mean, we're a similar age where it's like even plus the COVID stuff, like 2020, like you say, last 3 years. We're talking like last three, last four,
Yeah.
realistically, kind of like post college, post a little. It's like those we had almost like a weird similar experience where those little bit time after college was like a weird like you think you should be doing something, but like you don't almost feel like you fit in. Like I felt similar in a
Yeah.
different place, and um, it's really life just starts getting a little bit more real. Like we're getting older, and we're getting to that age
Yeah.
where you're hitting that space where you're maturing, you're understanding yourself a little bit more, and that's what it really it sounds like we're getting into with that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's thank you for saving me there. That's kind of what I was trying to get into. Um yeah, cuz like it's great cuz like I'm working at a place that I'm really grateful to be working at, but at the same time like yeah, like I still think like okay, like but what's my real purpose? And I'm still trying to seek for that. And I look at someone like you who does a podcast and my girlfriend is doing her passion. She's a photographer, highly successful in that field, and sometimes I look at that, I'm like, wow, like I kind of wish I, when I was in college and they asked me what I wanted to do, I kind of wish I'd thought about it more and lean into that. At the same time, I don't regret the path I took, and it's only leading me to greater things. But to kind of focus on the challenges, um, around this time last year, I was not in the best spot. I was like kind of lost. I really didn't know like what I could do. I started to learn more about like spirituality, and when I say spirituality, I know like that word already like triggers like a lot of people. I just want to say like I'm not talking about necessarily like you know um, astrology. This is like frequencies, like on a very scientific level. Energy. There's an energy in this room right now as we're talking, right? What brought us here today was probably like frequencies that lined up with each other. That's that's how like the universe works. There's magnetic fields everywhere, and you can you can lower frequencies, you can raise frequencies. It's a real thing. Um, I went on TikTok because that's when you're doom scrolling on TikTok, that's how you know like you're going through it.
That's also where you find some stuff too, though.
Exactly. And I found this woman, and she was doing a comedic skit. And it was basically a therapy session between herself and and the therapist was the universe. And she'd be like, "How come I can't find a husband?" And then the therapist is like, "Well, like, have you tried like working on yourself? Have you tried doing this and all that? Da da da." And she's like, "Why would I do that? Just give me my husband." And it's like it's basically a parody of like manifestation and how like people have misconceptions about it. That was so interesting. I was like, wow, like when I was watching these videos, I felt like it was really speaking to what I was dealing with in that situation. And I was like, damn, like I'm like so curious about this person. I want to learn more about him. So I go on her like link tree. I found out she's an actress, which is makes sense because her skits were high quality. I'm like, okay. Because like the universe was British and then she was English, she was American. I'm like, which one's which? It's American. um she had one-on-one sessions, and they were expensive, but I was like, damn, like I don't know, like I might just do it. Like, what do I got to lose? Like, let me just. I'm like, I only need one because, like, I felt like I've grown a lot at this point because I've grown a lot from work. I've grown a lot from, you know, going on dates. I think it's funny. Like, I won't harp on it too much, but I think my dating life really started when I moved to Boston, just because like I was finally on my own and there's just so many people there. But yeah, I learned so much from just like meeting so many people and being in high pressure from work and all these things, like all these character build things. I feel like I was right there, and I just needed a little tiny push to get to the next level where the person I knew I could be and I thought I wanted to be. Like I'll just set up one session with her. That's all I need. Um, and then I procrastinated, and then I didn't do it. And then I checked a week later, and she had no more sessions. They were gone. I was like, I did it again. Oh my god. Here I am again. Just why am I self-sabotaging? Why do I always do this? And then I looked further. She had this program. It's called Quantum Shift Accelerator. It's basically like a 3-month like lecture on like basically basically her skits, but like explaining like now like okay, this is like it's basically like a life coaching type of thing in a spiritual realm. And I know like it sounds very far fetched, and it sounds at least even to me at first, I was like, I don't know. I don't want to do it. That's now I didn't want to be in a group thing. I just wanted like a one-on-one, maybe get some practical advice, move on from there. Then I was just like, fuck it, man. Like I'm sick of like sitting in my room staring at the four walls, like, and like doing nothing. That's basically what it was. Like, I had a lot of ideas. Like, I had like, remember when I reached out to you and I was like, hey man, like I'm thinking about doing a podcast. Like, I had all these things. Like, I don't know, maybe I'll do music, maybe I'll act, maybe I'll uh edit videos. I don't know. I wanted to do something that wasn't just work. I don't know what the fuck it was. Um, and I was just doing nothing. So I was just like, you know what? Let me join this course, see what happens. Holy shit, that course changed my life. And I want to be able to talk about it. Her name is Paget Kagi, Quantum Shift Accelerator. I want to be able to speak to that because I feel like I wouldn't be doing my due diligence if I didn't speak to it because it really did change my life for the better. Um, Basically, it's a 12-week course, and there's lectures, there's biweekly coaching sessions, there's homework. It's a whole thing. It's well worth the value that comes with it. Um, Basically, the first 4 weeks is just like, you know, what brought you to where you are today? Why do you do the things you do? Why do you go to the gym? Why do you always feel like you need to get a promotion? And a lot of times you realize it's because of all these things that happened when you were younger, all these things that were traumatized. Like, maybe someone, I don't know, maybe someone always made fun of your body or something, or maybe you were told you weren't manly enough or like something like that. So that's why you go to the gym, because like, but you don't realize that until you actually like start digging down. Like, wow, I remember when I used to get made fun of in school, or um, I think for me, and I don't know if I should even like go that deep into it, but I was like, wow, maybe I want to accelerate and always want to be the best version of myself, because maybe I felt like I was like overlooked in high school. And I feel like I didn't make as many friends as I felt like I should have, and I don't know, maybe I felt like I should have been in a D1 college instead of going to community college, like things like that. But then you start to realize that, and then basically what the program allows you to do is like through meditation, you find the sensations in your, like when you really go deep, and I mean really go deep, and you really think about all those things that happen in your life, you start to realize where the sensations are in your body. That's stuck energy. That's what that is. And then obviously the goal of that is to eventually, as you realize your edges, to let them go. And then that's the first phase. The second phase is, all right, um, where where are you now? And then you go through the same process. Third phase is, where do you want to go? And then it ends with like manifestation, but she doesn't really harp on that too much, just because like a lot of people can go about manifestation the wrong way. You know what I mean? And the wrong way of going about manifestation essentially is, I have to do it. Don't do that, because you're setting yourself up for like a fight or flight situation in that sense. If you don't get it, you're going to be crushed and destroyed. And you know, uh for okay, so whatever. For me, it was relationships was a big thing. And I know obviously you have your TikToks, and obviously you're pretty,
I was going through it too. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you're
I
very
relate to you on
you're
that.
very public with like your struggles too. Me not so much, but still dealing with it. Because I wanted it so bad.
Same. Yeah.
I wanted it so bad. And it wasn't until I almost let it go is when I found how I'm fortunate to be in a great relationship today. You know what I mean? And it wasn't because I didn't want it anymore. I definitely still wanted it, but it wasn't like I have to have it or else my life is terrible type of mentality. Um, I was, you know, with that class, I was able to find something that was kind of like a purpose away from work. Um, it's something that I always thought I could look into when I was younger and didn't explore it until I got older. It's acting, which like, if you know me, that sounds like out of left field, but it is something that, like, obviously, just because in the environment's always around, obviously playing sports, you know, working at a big four firm, very like, kind of like fratty, masculine environments, you only get to explore your creative side. But it's something I always thought I was capable of doing. And unfortunately, it's tough now because of the responsibilities I have. And my responsibilities only get larger and larger, both professionally, personal life, everything else. So it's a lot harder for me to dive into that. And I'm doing my best. But goddamn, makes you a better person. And I'd be really doing myself a disservice if I played the victim mentality, like, oh, why me? Why can't I just like relax? Why do I have to juggle all these things? Well, I wanted these things. So I can't say why me. It's like, well, what if I just didn't make excuses and I try to make it work? Now, does that mean it's gonna work because I shifted my mentality? We'll see, right? But it's definitely a better way of going about it. And whatever comes from it, whether I become an actor in the next 5 years, or maybe it's just something I did that helped me grow, and it definitely has. It's definitely helped me, in conversations, be more present, listen and respond type of thing. Eye contact was something I struggle with, but like, not even that, just like being more okay. Now I have to be more productive with work because I have to craft for my acting class, and then I have to go to the grocery store. Then I'm gonna spend time with my girlfriend. Like everything starts piling up and adding up, and then like you don't really have time for yourself. But like again, this is the life I wanted, so I can't complain about it. You know. But gosh, like I'll look back on this and be like, damn, like man, I loved when I was 28 years old and I was doing everything I could have possibly done in my life because why not? Like you have the resources, you have the time, just do it. You know.
Yeah, and I think this Troy is the one that's so different than when the last several years when I've been talking to you. I could see it, I could hear it, and I could feel it. Like I hear what you're saying with a lot of spiritual stuff because I've kind of gone through a lot of this. I've seeked out like Peruvian shamans and doing different tarot cards. You get what you want from those, obviously, but like having different experiences to like dive into that spiritual aspect because I've been doing a lot of research in this realm around a project that I'm working on, but I haven't really talked about it on the
Sure.
podcast. But the a piece that's really missing from society is the spiritual religious aspect of things, like the faith based, the understanding of like believing in that higher power, whether it's the universe, whether it is a god, whether it's something of that nature, to have that belief that there is a force out there that does influence our energy. And all religions talk about energy. They might word it differently, but energy is like very, very important to the way we attract things or push things away. And I went through a similar experience was when I really wanted the relationship, but when I just started just to like let go of things,
Yeah.
that's when things come to you. And that's what works with manifestation is you think about it, you kind of somewhat obsess about it, but you have to also let it go for the universe to give it back to
Yeah.
you. Because if you don't let it go, you're just holding on to it,
Right.
and your universe is not going to give you something that you're not ready for as well.
Exactly.
So if you're constantly like, I'm ready for it, you're probably not ready
Right.
for it.
And that's what the whole program is trying to help you to do. It's just trying to let you release your energetic blocks so you can get the life that you want. Because you don't want to keep repeating your patterns that are not serving you. So you can't just manifest and just be like, oh, this is what I want, it's gonna happen. No, you have to work on yourself first. And the key words and what I've really gained from it is holy shit. Like I never loved myself as much as I did this year. And that was from the work of really looking at my past and all my experiences. And even it, what a perfect way, because I started this program in January and now it's December in this podcast. What a perfect way for 2023. I mean, to go through that process, experience life, and then now be able to reflect on it and just tell you about it. It's incredible.
Yeah, I'm glad that we waited to do this podcast now because I remember, like, I don't know if it was Jake. You told Jake, you're like, well, he hasn't asked me to come on the podcast. I want to come on the podcast. I'm like, well, you got to do something. You got to like, you were like, I could tell that you were like stuck. Like you were like, you're talking about energies.
Oh yeah.
Like the energy was stuck, and you were kind of like talking about the podcast. Like you could see it. Like you were knocking on the door right there. Like
Yeah,
you
but
wanted
I
the
knew
thing
I knew I wasn't ready to
ready.
talk about anything.
And
Yeah.
like that's where I don't. I think I'm pretty good at like not putting people in those situations to bring you on a
Yeah,
podcast
I
where
appreciate that.
you would get uncomfortable, and we would hit a wall, and you might not want to talk about certain things or things of that nature. And because I have several people who I want to interview, but they're just not ready.
Yeah.
Like, and it's whether they know it or whether they don't. I don't want to put people in situations where they get on a camera and make themselves act like a fool. In a sense, not saying that you would act like a fool, but
Right.
like I'm saying, in the sense of tripping over the words or saying something they don't mean, or you just you really need to come into a situation like that with the correct energy. And uh, once we were kind of reconnecting and setting up this date, and now just hearing you talk about stuff, I could really tell that what you put in at the beginning of the year is really manifesting in the correct ways. And I really do think you're going to figure it out going forward into what that aspect is, because you're also, you want it, you want it, and it takes that thought too to understand and to push forward into that. Because when I reflect on like the story I was telling you about, some of the work stuff I was going through recently and inspired some of this project that I'm working on, same thing happened when I was before in Georgia, and I've talked openly about this in the podcast. Was that environment combined with a lot of the work that I was doing, because I got my body right before then, but a lot of the mind stuff wasn't there yet. The fear of like not pursuing something that's like worthwhile. Like I didn't have like I'm really big on legacy, and I didn't have anything that I could look back on and was proud of. Besides, like obviously you work, you have your family, you have your friends, like those are good things, but I didn't have my thing.
Right.
And when you're put in that situation, the stress and like real life is bearing down on you, and you're like, damn, like this is my life. Like what the fuck? That's when you're able to kind of like really break out if you're ready for it. And I've been saying this a lot on I was on a podcast recently where sometimes the universe calls. All you have to do is answer the call. You just got to answer the call, and you know what that call
Yeah.
is, and you'll know what it like the energy feels like.
Yeah.
And there's just a feeling. And the better you get at recognizing it, the better you are at answering that call and helping your life move forward. In like the sense of when you went back and checked that stuff, you got the call. At first you were like, you wanted to answer it, but you got
Yeah.
nervous.
Yeah.
But they called again, and you answered it.
Yeah.
And now that you're progressing these stuff, it really sounds like that energy has been shifting. You're healing a lot of stuff that you needed to heal, and you found the relationship. And I'm really happy for you
Thank
as
you.
someone that has struggled and is also now in a good relationship,
Right.
to recognize that and to see that in your energy and the things that you post, and even doing the Spartan stuff. Like,
Yeah.
and I haven't seen you much because of football, because of real life, because we play flag football for the people that don't know.
Right.
But it sounds like you're moving in the right direction for the way that your life needs to go. And I'm really happy that you're able to come on this podcast and share a lot of these things, because it's really good stuff here.
Exactly, man. We'll get that flag football, and I just gotta make sure that the legs are good. and
Good,
stuff,
yeah. We'll probably wrapping up this year, because like I'm just like I got hurt last
getting old,
January
man.
and stuff, and like
You remember having me a couple years ago.
dude, that injury I had last January, like until like about like I want to say October, November, like I pulled my hamstring. It bothered me for the entire year, and like it just I'm being more cautious
I
about
think I
it and
strained my
stuff.
hamstring like crossing the street last week.
Dude, it's dude, it was such a bad injury. Like I pulled it, and then I tried to play again like a month later, being an idiot. Pulled it again, and it bothered me the entire year. I had to go back to PT in September, dude. It was
Yeah.
disaster. But it's been a year of this has been one of the greatest years of my life, but also
Same.
while having one of the most difficult fitness years of my life as well, trying to
Yeah.
overcome injuries. So it's like it's weird. Like it's all about the perspective. It's how you look at things, how you perceive things, and it's a big aspect of life is always about patience. It goes back to just letting things be. Like my leg is what it is. Like I have to do the stuff to help progress it, but if I over obsess, if I over cling to it, it's never going to get better. Stuck energy doesn't move. Like
Yeah.
it's all about releasing it. And I think that's been a really good message for this podcast. I do want to start bringing us home with the podcast.
Sure thing.
I do have one more question for you, and that question is, what would your advice be for someone who wants to pursue their passion?
Pursue their passion. So obviously, like I mentioned before, my passion is something that I'm still seeking, but um again, obviously take action is number one, obviously, but I would just, you know, kind of allude to what I was mentioning before, like kind of like do the work on yourself too, like really understand who you are, like really understand what strikes you, what makes you, you know, what makes you fired up. And that's not a quick process either. It could take weeks, could take months, could take years. But as soon as you do, like, you know, don't I would just say this is probably the most important thing I'll say about it. Let go of how you think it should happen, and just let life just receive what life gives you. Because if you approach it that way, it's just going to be so much better for you. Because if you have, not that you shouldn't have expectations and goals, absolutely you should do that. You should have goals, but kind of like with manifestation, if you let go of how you think it's supposed to happen, and if it doesn't happen this way, then fuck it. Why did I even try? Then that's just not the way I go about it. But if you go in from the right place, knowing that it's beneficial to you, and if it's not, you could walk away from it too. Great. But if you're going in knowing that this is going to make you better, this is definitely making you grow, and there's an energy around it, hey, go for it. But just receive and take what life is giving you, or the universe, or God, or however you want to subscribe to it. Just really take that in and just allow it to, because that's when you'll start to welcome in all the opportunities that you would have never thought were even possible. And that's not coming from me. Like, just want to preface, I'm not an expert in this subject. This is like a lot of things I've learned from the Quantum Shift Accelerator, or the QSA program, as we like to call it. Um, and I'm still learning that. I'm still learning to apply everything I just said. But again, like, I feel like if I didn't mention that, then I would have done a disservice. So I'm glad I'm able to come on here and spread the wealth, spread the love, spread the message.
Absolutely, man. And I really appreciate that you took time out of your day to come do this and talk about these things,
Like,
and
yeah,
just talk about your life in a way that otherwise we might not have been able to discuss without having a setting like this, or me having a platform and learning how to have these conversations and show them or showcase them to an audience for them to receive this message. And you mentioned not being like an expert in this stuff. None of us are. This is the
we're
first
all
time
learning.
that we've been here, as far as we know. This is the first time that we've been here trying this out in this body. So
Yeah.
you just gotta like take it for what it is. We're all learning, we're all growing, and this is just your take on life so far. So I
So
appreciate
far.
you for doing this podcast, and I look forward to seeing a lot of the growth that you have.
Thanks, man.
Of course. So for you guys, if you guys like the podcast, please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, share with your family, share with your grandma. Check out the carrollconnection.simplecast.com. Also available Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the major listening platforms. If you like to watch your podcast, go on YouTube, search the Carroll Connection, or at Jared M. Carroll, and it'll pop up for you. And if you want to be a guest or return as a guest, hit me up on Instagram at Jared M. Carroll or at the Carroll Connection, and we'll do that. So, till next time, guys, peace.